Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Thursday night, June the 7th, 2018. We're 5 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Hope everybody's having a good evening here. I see from the conversation that began before the live stream went out that you're talking about things that are important, like the odds on Hofburg in the Belmont Stakes. Okay, and that's a good thing. By the way, a little bit of a signal issue going on here tonight for some reason, so I'm hoping that you're seeing me clear and hearing me. I'm sorry, if you see me clearly and hearing me clearly. We'll touch on the race and a few other things. By the way, it looks to me like there's a really good chance that the Belmont's going to be run on a fast track because a lot of the models have kind of backed off on the showers, and the height of the north from Canada looks like it wants to push down a bit further south and a bit stronger, which will not only suppress the thunderstorm activity to some degree and push it further south, but it probably also means that we'll have a pretty good looking Sunday. So I'm hoping that it works out. We do have a lot of severe weather risk tonight, though, going on, and you can see there's this rather large area that kind of snakes around from the northern Rockies and the northern and central plains, or at least the western part of the northern and central plains, where we have this big area of slight risk and a large severe thunderstorm watch that's in the blue box that was just put up in the last hour or so. We have a standing severe thunderstorm watch that continues throughout much of North Texas and western Oklahoma. That's the other area of slight risk, and you can see the radar echoes from the Oklahoma watch box that we do have some strong thunderstorms there, and also even some strong thunderstorms in northeast Texas that are dropping southward. Haven't seen the big cells fire up yet in the watch box in the Rockies, but I bet you an hour from now or 2 hours from now they will be. So if you're watching this later on this evening, if you're just tuning us in for the first time, and it's after 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern Time, just bear in mind that this picture you're seeing here of the radar and the Storm Prediction Center's view of things is from 7:07 Eastern Time. So you should check your local National Weather Service forecast office and their local radar for the latest on what's happening. Also, we do have some general thunderstorms in the southeast and over Florida. There looks like there's a little bit of an upper air rotation over Florida. There might be some kind of cold upper low that is sitting down there, and just watching how these thunderstorms are moving, just sort of looks like there might be some kind of weak upper air, cold upper air storm here that's generating some of the thunderstorms that you see over the Sunshine State. So we'll take a look at my neck of the woods. We'll even go a little bit wider than that. So I'll take the U.S. satellite view and satellite loop. So it looks like there's some kind of upper trough there over Florida. You'll notice the system that's up in eastern Canada starting to move a little bit to the east. So the influence is being lessened to some degree in terms of its overall influence down to my latitude, where we were sitting in clouds for a part of the day at least before we finally went over to at least some broken cloud cover and sunshine this afternoon, and a lot of the cloud cover is now continuing to break apart as we move into this evening. Excuse me. Still got this residual, what's left of this head cold, which is down to its very end. I am feeling a lot better tonight. Dry air to the west. You do see the the thunderstorms that are developing back through Oklahoma on the loop here. They fire up in the last several flames. They're really starting to get very strong there, and also the thunderstorms that are extending into northeastern Texas. And those clouds are actually inching down north to south with what's going on out in the plain states. So all of this energy that's up in the plains is going to be coming eastward, but it looks like a lot of it is going to either weaken or just kind of translate to the south. So that's why I'm thinking that we may wind up with a fast track up my way for the Belmont Stakes. So the other thing that's going on tonight is we do have the first hurricane of the season and in the Pacific, and this is Aletta, and it stands out very obviously on the satellite loop tonight. You can see it here. I'll make it a little bigger, and there you have it. Aletta's looks like an eye is visible as it continues on a west-northwest track, and it's probably going to get a little bit stronger before it starts to weaken over the next 2 or 3 days. There will be another tropical storm likely to form over the weekend on the Pacific side in much the same place as this one started out, off the south coast of Mexico. And that will probably meet the same fate. These are out-to-sea scenarios that we're dealing with, so not really too concerned about those tropical storms impacting any land. But I do want to show you, and I'm going to bring up the upper air for the Gulf and the Caribbean going into next week, because it does appear, at least in terms of what the upper air looks like, that we're going to see something that is fairly similar to what we saw with the formation of subtropical storm Alberto. And in fact, I'm going to bring up there we go. So we're going to go to, oops, sorry. Never seem to get this right, do I, Joe? Hang on. There we go. All right, so I got it now. Okay, so we'll bring it up in the paint box. And I'm just going to make sure that you can see what I'm seeing, and you are. So that's a good thing. So this is the upper air jet stream, 18,000 feet, 500 millibars. And this is for Sunday morning, 2 a.m. And one of the things, well, you could see the southern edge of the westerlies here pretty well. They are running right across southern Virginia, northernmost North Carolina, right in here. So there's the southern band of your westerlies, and they continue out into the open waters of the Atlantic. But much like what you had with Alberto, where you had high pressure that was sitting off the Atlantic coast, high pressure, and it was flat high pressure, okay? It's not built all the way up north. It's sort of east-west and has a flat look to it. And you have a ridge that is sitting from Mexico into Texas and Oklahoma and Kansas. And in between that, you do have an upper trough that extends from the central Gulf states down into the northwestern Caribbean. So there is a weakness here in the upper flow. And that is, again, it's not that different from what we saw with Alberto. And it's in a situation like this that what we're going to wind up seeing is lower than normal pressures eventually developing in the western Caribbean, maybe even down into the southwestern Caribbean. So perhaps from here, this is where we're likely to see something try to develop sometime next week. So maybe along about next Tuesday or Wednesday, we might see a system come from there. The models, you have the GFS, the Canadian, and you also have the German model actually showing something now. So we do have 3 models that are picking up on this. The European still is not, but I would also point out that the European didn't really show Alberto until we got well into the 5-day time frame. So it might be something in the model that's well, it depends on how this turns out. If we wind up getting a tropical system, this would have been the second time where the European really didn't pick up on it in the long range. On the other hand, if we don't get a tropical system, this will be the GFS for picking up on, for showing this for quite a while now. The only difference is at this point we're seeing this come inside the 7-day time frame. So I think it's worthy of a raised eyebrow, and that's all at this point. This could wind up being nothing but disturbed weather and convection that it really doesn't amount to very much. And I'll go back to this U.S. satellite loop because it does extend at least far enough south. Now, one of the things that's been fairly consistent over the last few weeks is that it has been a bit on the busy side in terms of showers and thunderstorms in the Caribbean, and we're seeing that again tonight on the U.S. satellite loop. You can see some disturbed weather flaring up. Now, this is not related to what I just spoke of. I'm just illustrating that the conditions there seem to be where we're getting these, at least we're getting diurnal weather, the disturbed weather, diurnal meaning that it flares up during the day and then kind of calms down at night. But again, the models would suggest that we are going to see pressures lower than normal next week in the Northwest Caribbean, which might allow for something to develop as far as the tropics are concerned. Now, I'm going to bring up the latest GFS model run and the NAM, so we'll bring this up front and center. And I'll leave me in the picture here. And here we go. So let's see if we can, I can get the upper air first. For some reason I can get the geography I want with the upper air if I do it first. So just making sure you guys can see what I see, which is a good thing, and you are, so I can continue. So what we have at the moment is strong ridge out along wait, I'll make sure I got the first one up there, and I do. Okay, so we've got this strong ridge out along 40 degrees west, built all the way up to Iceland and Greenland. We have this trough in the eastern part of the United States. Now, that is, of course, lifting out, and then because of the fact that you do have this, ridging and a bit of blocking and a negative North Atlantic oscillation at work, it is preventing the trough in the east from completely lifting out and getting us into a ridge position. Instead, we get basically a rotation where energy lifts up northward, northwestward, and then comes around on the backside and drops back in. This is something that the models have been contending for a while, and we're seeing it again here. Although on this late afternoon run, it's a little bit further to the east than it was on the prior one. Perhaps this is because it does seem to have maybe a slightly weaker ridging going on in Greenland and Iceland on this run. It still will probably mean the same thing for the most part. Now, it tries to finally lift out, but notice we've got this big blocking high around the middle of next week, and it's covering up north-central Canada, so you've got the entire jet stream displaced way to the south of what it otherwise would be. I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger. The jet stream is running across the Pacific into the Pacific Northwest, and then right through the Ohio Valley and off the East Coast. So the jet is running, pretty far to the south, and that's keeping things. That's going to keep things from getting hot here in the east. In fact, this is not, other than the areas that normally get hot this time of year, except for Texas and back down into the southwest where there is an upper ridge there, you don't have a lot of really blazing heat going on. And even as we go into the long term later next week, another trough drops down into the northeast. And actually part of that trough, if you want to believe it, drops all the way down off the southeast coast of the United States and cuts off. I don't know how real that is. But you still have a pretty active jet happening until very late in the period when you suddenly, the model wants to pop up a ridge just off the east coast. But you still have active troughing swinging around into the Rockies and Plains. So this is, at the very least, it doesn't look, for my part of the Northeast anyway, and that we're going to get into any kind of heat wave anytime soon. I think the best that you're going to wind up seeing here is the odd day here and the odd day there, where temperatures are going to be rather warm. I want to just go back to the beginning, because as we go through the weekend, this deep trough off the west coast does come inland into the Pacific Northwest, and we've been mentioning the last few days that it actually will be cold enough for snow in the northern Rockies and into southwestern Canada out of this. It also may be cold enough for snow again if you look up in Labrador, in parts of Labrador underneath the upper low that's sitting there over Sunday into Monday. So that would not be a shock if we wind up seeing something out of that. In fact, I'll put the snowfall, and you can see two areas that are being indicated, one in the northwest and the other one in Labrador, from the two upper lows that are in play. Here's the, I'll give you a tighter view. Maybe you'll see this a bit better. If we go to the U.S., and indeed, this is all obviously going to be elevation driven out in the west, but it is going to show up. And in the upper corner, you can see the what's being shown up for parts of southeastern Canada. I don't think it's going to let me bring up the map again. Oh, it does. Okay, good. Whatever was going on the other day is not going on now, so I'm happy. Here's your snow map for southeastern Canada. Now, this is not in inches. This is in centimeters, but it is early June. I know it's not that unusual to see it in Labrador in June, but we've seen it quite a few times over the last couple of weeks. So I'm just kind of surprised that we're almost into this is through Tuesday, June 12th. So we're almost into the middle of June, and we're still talking about some snow possibilities up in that part of the world. How this plays out on the surface, by the way, is with these upper lows that are rotating. You've got this weather system on Saturday morning that's moving into Labrador, so it's basically the cold air on the west side, and then it just goes to the east and rotates around. You've got another system that's dropping down from the northwest as we head into Monday and Tuesday. It doesn't really produce a whole lot of precip in these 6-hour time frames, but at least you could see from the maps how this is all coming out. And for Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, it doesn't get cold enough down there. Just a few showers will be going through here as these two weather systems play themselves out. And as we move into Tuesday, it looks like we have a cold front that drops down into southeastern Canada with some rain showers there. And then off we go at the end, toward the end of next week, when another low and cold front approach with some rain. All right, now let's come back home and take a look at what's happening in our neck of the woods. So let's go back. Here's the issue with respect to the Northeast, and it's this is the tough forecast question: is the strength of this high that is coming down out of southeastern Canada. The models have had a very difficult time with this. Different models would handle it in different ways. The European and the NAM would both imply that for much of my area, Saturday and Sunday will be dry with a minimal shower and thunderstorm threat here on Saturday. The GFS perhaps has a bit more in play with some storms, possible southern New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania down into Virginia and Maryland. By the way, this is where the Storm Prediction Center does have potential for some risk when you head down into the Delmarva Peninsula and into Maryland and Virginia for Saturday. So just bear that in mind. This is an area that's been hit especially hard with respect to heavy rains over the last number of weeks. On Sunday morning early, though, that next high is pressing down, and that is going to be the big question for Sunday. How far south does it press down? And most of the models, at least for my area, which is based northeastern Pennsylvania, most of New Jersey, southern New England, Long Island, New York City, Sunday will turn out to be a pretty nice day, although a slightly cool day. And also you can see the system coming into the west with that deep trough coming into southwestern Canada and then moving eastward from there, producing the snows in the northern Rockies going into Sunday and Monday before weather conditions improve. This model run does show some semblance of a tropical system. Again, this is for later Wednesday and Thursday of next week, so we're talking day 6 and 7, perhaps forming around day 5. Again, I want to emphasize that I really don't think it offers a lot of value or any kind of forecast value this far along. I would just, as I said earlier, the fact that you have this trough, this weak upper trough that's going to set up in the Gulf, from the central Gulf states down into the Caribbean, provides a weakness and an opportunity, as pressures there will remain low. And it's from that we got subtropical storm Alberto, and the upper air is not that different this time around, so who's to say that we can't have the same thing happen again. A lot of times in seasons you see a similar theme running in terms of how storms form. You see that in the wintertime. Perhaps that's what we're seeing right now with how subtropical storm Alberto formed in late May. Maybe it's going to repeat like that since the upper air pattern basically across the northern hemisphere is not that different. So maybe it'll do it a second time. We'll see. In the meantime, coming back to the board with everybody. Okay, Reaver, if you're already talking about the winter and we're not even into the summer yet, so can we stop that? I find that most of the people that get headlines, you don't get headlines by calling for a warm winter, so you call for a cold winter. And you know what? Broken clocks are right twice a day. Eventually it's going to happen. This is why I do not get wrapped up or involved with regards to the long range stuff, and that's the way I'm going to stay with when it comes to that sort of thing. Anthony Orr and some of you talking the Belmont. I certainly think he's. Again, I don't know who you talk. I certainly think he's in the running. You're talking about Hofberg. Yeah, you know what? My feeling is, the thing I don't like about races like this, when you've got a standout horse that is is on the verge of making history, and as someone who has followed the game since the 70s, remembering Secretariat, Seattle Slew, Affirmed, and then a few others that don't get mentioned, for example, just to show you that I did follow it other than the Triple Crown winners, like Riva Ridge, for example, and Dahlia, who was a great filly. I could go on and on, going through the 80s and 90s, so I've paid a lot of attention to these things. Personal Ensign, Winning Colors, Miesk, so I know my horses. And Ali Sheba, Cigar. I got a real particular appreciation for the sport. That's on one side of the equation, and on the other side, you've got the smart betting. And I think what I may do is I'll see who the betting public makes the third choice. If that horse is better than 10-1, I might throw a few bucks on him. I certainly use Justify in my pick fours. I like to do pick fours. So I will use him and maybe a couple of other horses in that leg and see how it goes. Does have an Omega block look to it, Reaver. When I showed you the map before with that big cutoff high in central Canada, it does look like that. Israel, you're being very kind, and I don't think I'm right 24/7. Not by any stretch of the imagination. Ethan Kerr, what are the chances that we get a few inches of snow tonight on the Jersey Shore, because I don't feel like waking up at 5:30 to go to school? Less than 0. I think you are waking up and going to school. So, Cullen, you got my opinion on the new GFS. I'm kind of hoping that it's right, because I really would like things to be quiet and calm this weekend. Do I think the troughing, Israel Fruitiger, do I think the troughing will continue through the summer? I know the GFS likes to have a bias in popping the ridge, leaving in the power year, and then the next day it's not there. Well, I will say that right now I don't see any sign of the ridge popping up anytime soon. Okay, I think that says that at least through for the next 2 weeks, other than the odd very warm day here and there, we're going to continue in this pattern. Although I think next week for my area, it may be nice for a change for most days. David Schwartz, I did read that article. David sent me a link. It was a CNN story regarding statistics that from one of the forecasters, I believe it was one of the forecasters at the Hurricane Center, just did a little bit of data searching and data mining, and it seems that the forward speed of hurricanes has been slowing as a whole over the last, I don't know how many decades, but they've been slowing. And yet, at the same time, you know, one of the things I found lacking in that story, David, is there's no real connection made between that and if there's, you know, if this is because of climate change or not. And, you know, he even admits that this might be just some sort of statistical stuff some sort of cyclical stuff that's going on, that you do have, you know, periods where these things move along. You have periods where they seem to develop in upper air patterns that favor them slowing and stalling. The implication of the story was that, you know, we're going to see more of these, and that's going to mean for much more in terms of rainfall and potential flooding. And I don't know, I really walked away from it with a kind of sort of a shoulder shrug. I don't think it really says that this is something, you know, unusual and something new. But if his stats show that they are slowing down, then yeah, it probably will mean that you're going to see these systems produce more rain as they move inland. Certainly, we saw what happened with Harvey, but Harvey was, you know, that upper air situation with Harvey where it was essentially trapped with no place to go. Not a surprise that it did what it did. Chambermaid, the volcanoes right now are not impacting weather patterns. The Fuego volcano in Guatemala, its eruption spewed ash up to about 35,000 feet. So I think what we're going to have to wait and see on that is whether, you know, there's a major eruption that comes that throws ash up into the stratosphere. That could have some longer term implications, but right now not the case. But it is something that we're going to be watching. Israel Fruitiger, your local library, they can contact me on my Facebook page. They can message me that way, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, and then, you know, or they can, you know, my email is on my Facebook page as well, on my weather page, which is a public page, so they should be able to find it. Yeah, just tell them to get in touch with me, and we can discuss. It's a little tough for me to get over to New Jersey. I am going to be in, I believe, in Springfield, New Jersey, in October, which is up in the western parts of Union County. I'll give the dates out as we get closer, but I'm going to be at the Springfield Library in New Jersey come mid-October. So if I can manage to figure out a way to get down to where you are, I'll have to talk to the library about that. So have them get in touch with me. And good evening from Keith Smolin from Paramus. With all this rain, no drought this summer. Well, you know, as long as we don't go into a 4 or 5 week stretch where we don't see any rain at all. But you know, right now, that doesn't seem to be happening. We'll probably have another chance for showers and storms here, perhaps Wednesday of next week with the next weather front. Although that one looks like something that's going to be moving along and not stalling out. Johnny Quest, local weather forecasters say there's a high likelihood of flooding in western Virginia. Well, I will tell you this. With the way this frontal boundary is setting up, and we mentioned it earlier when we were running through the GFS. Either way, I think that if this thing winds up, this frontal boundary sags a little bit further south with that high pressing down, you are going to get into some heavier thunderstorms in your neck of the woods on Saturday. And again, the Storm Prediction Center does have your area in what looks like a marginal risk for severe weather on Saturday, and there might be more of an emphasis on rain out of this than anything else. In fact, I do have the 7-day rainfall forecast map. I have been leaving this up from the Weather Prediction Center, and it does refresh every day, so we always have the new map. I think it's pretty useful, at least from the standpoint of what those guys are seeing. And if you look at the rainfall for the next 7 days, we are seeing the Weather Prediction Center showing a rather large area of 2-inch plus rains, and this is going to be front-end loaded. So this is for this weekend across Virginia and West Virginia, down into North Carolina and up north into the Delmarva Peninsula, and then of course the amounts tail off as you go north of there. The light blue is the 1.5 inch. So when you start to get into these purples, you're talking 2 inches plus. So yeah, I would agree. I think that you are going to see some heavy rain possibilities in Western Virginia on top of all the rain that you have been having. So this is going to be potential for some another round for some potential for some flooding as we move into the weekend. So again, I'm thinking for the Belmont, a fair chance that we could have there's a fairly good chance now that that may be run on a fast track. Unless some odd shower or thunderstorm pops up, we may wind up with relatively dry, warm conditions for most of Saturday in Elmont, New York, which is in western parts of Nassau County, just east of the Queens line. So where New York City is, Belmont is right on the very edge. In fact, the border of New York City, of Queens and Nassau County, cuts across Belmont Park at one point. So that's how close it is. So again, I think there's a fairly good chance that Justify gets a fast track. And you know what? If he gets a fast track, they may not catch him. And I don't think he has to be on the lead either. I think he can stalk. If somebody goes out ahead, if any of the outside speed comes and decides to to go out on the lead, he may just let him have the lead and just stalk him and then make a move. Hopefully not too soon, because the Belmont Stakes is littered with horses that made the move on the leaders too soon, took the lead too early, and then couldn't hold on for that last 1/8 of a mile or 1/16 of a mile, because that gets a lot of horses in the end. That 1.5 miles is a formidable distance, and for almost all of these horses, they'll never race at that distance again. The full study on that hurricane slowing, David Schwartz, the full study on the hurricane slowing is in the latest issue of Nature. If you know anyone that gets it, or maybe check it at your local library. I'll take a look. Maybe it'll show up online too. So I will take a look. I will be, by the way, I'm going to be in the North Babylon Library on Long Island on Saturday at 2:30 in the afternoon. That's in Deer Park, 2:30 to 4 o'clock, and we'll be talking hurricanes. So I always get there about an hour. These libraries talks, I usually get there about an hour early. So I will take a look and see if they have it there, and I'll do a little searching online. Do you think you can get Craig Allen with you one of these? I do know him. I certainly could try. I have one of the things I have to work on. I'm resolving a bunch of technical issues, and I've actually been having some success at doing it. But one technical issue that I have to figure out is how to get Skype inside the program that I use to broadcast to you guys. I use OBS, which is an open source. Basically, it's a studio. It's a TV studio, and it allows me to switch back and forth with all the maps that I show. When I've got the screen up like this, you can see all the boxes that I have, so I can bring them front and center. I should be able to bring Skype up too. I haven't figured out how to do that because I might need a second camera. So I have to talk with a couple of technical people about this, if that might solve my problem. Because once I get that solved, then my plan is to basically split the screen. Okay, so you'll have me on one side and a guest on the other, and bring guests on from time to time. So give me a little bit of time to work that out, and I will get to it. Okay, sometimes with technical stuff with me, when it's a little complicated, I tend to step back at first until I get the nerve I work up the nerve and the courage to go ahead and try to fix it, because it's always in the back of my mind that I'm going to wind up breaking something else. But 99 times out of 100, I do wind up solving that. David, I will need a second camera. I know someone who does a web show and brings guests on with Skype. I thought that would be the case. Okay, so I will be hunting for a second camera, and I will gradually, I'll get it on. I will get it working. I wouldn't call Craig my nemesis, by the way. Craig and I have known each other for many years, and we both work at Channel 11, so you know, we do work occasionally, not rarely side by side, but we do share the same workplace, and we do talk every once in a while. Excuse me. Do I use the buyer, Rich Rothmansky, do I use the buyer speed figures to handicap? I look at the buyer speed figures. One of the things I like to do is maybe not use the absolute number, but I like to look for a series of rising buyer speed figures. If I see the numbers are going up, and if I think that the horse has room to perhaps improve a bit more, I use that as a positive sign. And also in the other way, if I see the numbers tailing off, I've actually caught a number of good horses looking at ascending buyer speed figures as one of the ways I try to you know, pick a horse that might be a bit of a standout. I've had some success with getting some horses to come in with odds using that technique. It's not the only technique I use, but it is a good angle to handicap with. Buyer speed figures, it's actually B-E-Y-E-R, Andy Beyer of Daily Racing Form, drf.com. If you go there, he has a speed figure system, and speed figures are assigned horses, are assigned to horses out of races. There are a lot of things that go into that, including the condition of the track, what some of the other horses were doing that day on that particular in similar races, how fast were they running in the first part of the race, how fast in the second part of the race, etc., etc. So you can find those on. Well, you have to be a premium user of the Daily Racing Form. Those are usually they're on the Daily Racing Form charts, and you can take a look at those. But I think you have to be a premium member of drf.com. All right, so we're covering handicapping both weather and in horses. There is a little bit of a similarity in terms of the forecast approach, in terms of the mindset. When it comes to horse racing, I basically look at it as a gigantic math puzzle. So if I do it that way, it makes a lot more sense to me. All right, folks, we've been going a while here tonight, so we're going to put an end to it at this point. Have a great evening. I've got some other website posts up that talk about some of the stuff we were talking about tonight, so check those out at meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Also, just want to mention the fact that I'm a participant in the Amazon Services Associates program, which is an advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees from Amazon by linking to Amazon, and you can find the link on the descriptor to this live stream or on the descriptor to the video when it goes up in the video library. If you shop on Amazon through that link, you get your stuff. Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin, and everybody's happy. It's a great way to support my channel, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So thanks to those of you who have done that. Thank you for those who have hit Super Chat along the way. I really appreciate that very much. And Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight on Facebook. I believe tonight we will be there at 8:45 or so, 8:50, because of some scheduling maneuvers that we have to do here. So have a great evening. And if we don't see you tonight, we will see you tomorrow.